Alright, hey. Today I'm talking to you about a practice and essentially a philosophy that has really come to mean a lot to me in my life. It's been extremely useful and powerful for me, for my clients, for my friends, and anyone I know who's really ever uh, really taken the time to get into this practice. And it's called inner dialogue work. Now, before I go into it, I want to preface it by saying that it it involves understanding and accepting a new philosophy on the way that human beings work. Now, I guess it could be pretty radical, but I just want to say that this isn't inherently true by any means. This is just a way of looking at ourselves that is empowering and helpful, um, and um, and yeah. So if it helps you, great. If it doesn't, fantastic. We'll find something else that does. So the essence of this work is all about the belief that you are not just one personality, that you are a combination of dozens of different personalities that are all kind of coexisting in one container, one body. And to explain this a little bit, I use the description of having an emotion. When you have an emotion, when you experience an emotion, there's an entire personality inside of that emotion. And what that means is when you're afraid of something, you have things that you may not even be aware of that would alleviate that fear for you. There's things you want in that moment, there's things you need in that moment, and there's things you absolutely don't want in that moment. And so those are all what I would call, aspects that create an entire personality in that moment. Your personality wants this, doesn't want this in that moment, okay? So if you allow your emotion to happen, all of this passes through your system just fine. No big deal there. The issue comes in when you don't let yourself experience your emotions completely. And that entire range of personality gets stuck inside your body. And it doesn't go anywhere, is the thing. Um, and over time, it can ferment and it can start to go sour if you leave it in there for long enough. And since it's alive and since it's a personality, it can eventually just get angry at you or whatever the reason that it feels it's stuck. And that can cause problems for you because you literally have energy inside of you working against you if you keep it there long enough. But that's a little bit more on the extreme side. And it does happen. But on the more subtle, immediate side, you're working against yourself in the sense that you're dedicating a portion of your energy to keeping a part of yourself suppressed. And so if you're working to keep a certain part of yourself suppressed, then you're not going to be functioning at your fullest. If you're dedicating part of yourself to saying no, your ability to say yes to life is diminished. And not only that, but you have a block in your energy system. And so you can't flow as easily, you find yourself a little bit more sluggish, maybe experiencing some anxiety or fatigue, different things like that. And then in extreme cases, if you have enough energy blockages, they can result in physical symptoms such as aches, pains, or even cancer if you let it go on long enough. So with that said, I'm going to talk about something that I use with my clients to help alleviate these blockages, to help free up some of that mental and emotional energy that you're using to keep yourself down and allow that flow to flow. And all it really starts with is an acknowledgement. If there's an emotion that's trapped inside of you, all it really needs is acknowledgement and recognition. And oftentimes, that's really the only thing we're keeping from it. we don't want to acknowledge it, because if we acknowledge it, then we have to acknowledge its consequences and its impact. And so we just act like it isn't there. And that doesn't work because, it is there. So if you want to start freeing yourself up, all you have to do is start by acknowledging the fact that this feeling or emotion exists in the first place. And then once you start to do that, it starts to become more an awareness. You start to become aware of what it feels like. Like, oh, this is actually anger, or this is disappointment, and then underneath of it is this feeling. You start to become more aware of it, and as you become more aware of it, you actually start to become more comfortable with it, create more space around it, and it starts to unravel itself. Now, in the most expressed version of this, and the most powerful version of this, I guess you could say, is when you can tune into it and actually say that thing that needs to be said. If someone hurt your feelings and you're feeling sad, and you've been holding in that sadness and not really acknowledging it or talking about it, the most powerful thing you can do is just tell the person. And you can do it mindfully and consciously, so you're not just accusing them of things, so you're not perpetuating the negative energy cycle. All you can just say is, hey, when you said or you did this thing, I felt sad. And I urge you to give this a shot, because I think you'd be amazed at what some of the outcomes of such a simple communication can be. Not only will you get off your chest what you need to get off your chest, you'll free up your energy space, you will have more energy available to you because you freed up that space. And this is a powerful exercise in overcoming your fear, in allowing your expression and your well-being and your health and your honesty to be more important than any fear that you may have. And that is a powerful means to move forward. Also, if it does involve another person, when you hold things back from people, you're actually putting something in between you and that other person. And so when you acknowledge that and speak it out loud, you actually get to clear the space between you and that other person. You get to experience greater intimacy. And if that's your goal, it is important to make sure that you speak what you need to speak in a conscious and mindful way, instead of saying, you hurt my feelings when you did this, and I can't believe you did that, and I'm disgusted with you. And while that stuff may be true, there is a more mindful way of saying it to where you and the other person can come closer together. And that looks like what I said before. Is, hey man, when you said this, I felt sad. And actually felt a little bit disgusted. And you can say those things in ways that will, maybe not hurt the other person's feelings, but it can reduce the amount of damage and increase the amount of connection. And free up your personal space, and you don't have that thing nagging you in the back of the head that you're not talking about, and you're free to move forward. And this has been an incredibly powerful thing for me, to acknowledge all those different parts of myself and integrate them and acknowledge the lessons that they have for me. You learn how you want to be treated. You learn how you don't want to be treated. You learn a lot of different really valuable things about yourself by reclaiming the parts of yourself that you've been ignoring. And oftentimes, the parts of yourself that you're the most afraid of are the parts that have the most value for you. I can speak from my personal experience. I had a lot of anger in me for a really long time, and I was really afraid of that anger. And so I did everything I possibly could to ignore that anger. And, it got so bad that it started turning against me, and these turned into like self-destructive thoughts. And one day I just decided that this was something I had to deal with. And so I went into counseling, and I learned how to reclaim this lost part of myself. And I gotta tell you, it was the best thing I've ever done. I still do it. Um, I'm still in the process of reclaiming this part, but I've grown so much because of it, and it actually became my biggest ally, um, and the gateway to one of the greatest gifts I could ever give the world. So I urge you to acknowledge your emotions, to appreciate the gifts that they have for you, especially the ones you're avoiding the most. Those are the most valuable. Um, and to find a way to consciously communicate what needs to be consciously communicated, um, through getting to know yourself and all these different little parts of yourself. Um, and also acknowledge the power and the immensity of what you're taking on if this is something that you need to take on. And I highly recommend hiring a professional for some of the bigger stuff. Like childhood trauma wounds. That could be some deep stuff that you may not necessarily want to go into on your own for your own health and well-being. You may want to consult a professional. So just be aware. But for general everyday kind of things, this idea, this philosophy, this practice can be absolutely life changing, and I highly recommend it, and I deeply applaud and appreciate you and anyone you know who's decided to take on this practice, even in tiny little baby steps and little increments, because it is the beginning of a brand new path, a brand new life that is beyond what you can currently imagine. So, thank you for doing that. We all are better because of every step you take forward towards yourself. So, thank you. Um, and I also really appreciate you taking the time to watch this entire thing. This is this really means a lot for me, for you to be here. So, thank you.